Last we tuned in, we started in on chapter 13. Thick chapter. There's a lot of stuff here. I'll give you an idea here. I have 11 pages of notes. So just a heads up.
It's just for the first 4 sentences.
Oh, yeah. And really could have gone deeper, to be honest. That is a true statement. So there's some pretty thick stuff here. You recall around verse 1, Jesus started talking about the temple was going to be destroyed. And it actually did happen in 70 AD. We talked about, kind of introduced the concept of a preterist and a futurist and a hybrid understanding called the already but not yet. And we talked about differences there. The preterist stated that everything prophesied that Jesus said has already been done. A futurist is looking far into the future, like in our time or later. And an already but not doneer, not yetter, is somebody who views things in the past as models for a much bigger cataclysmic finality type event in the future. And so I think I would fall easily into the already but not yet category on that. Jesus continues with the signs of the ends of the age. And we see a Markan sandwich starting in 5. And about people being led astray, and 7 wars and rumors of wars. But the big focus there is where he said that these must take place, but the end is not yet. And so the world, just being the world, there's going to be wars and rumors of wars and earthquakes and various places and famines. He's saying that that's just kind of proof. That's kind of proof of life, proof of the situation. That verses 7 through 8, and he's talking about there's a delay here, but and don't think that things are ending. It's just a proof of life that the world is pregnant and there are contractions, but this time frame can last for thousands of years, as it's turned out. It's just basically proof of life. Don't be alarmed. And
Didn't we learned too the birth pains?
Yeah, these are birth pains, is what they are.
And intensity.
They will at the end. They certainly will. But we'll learn tonight that the intensity and the magnitude is going to be so great that there will be absolutely no doubt what's going on. Yeah, but that's a very good point. Let's see, where else we go here. He said that you're going to be delivered to councils and beaten in synagogues and so forth, and certainly that happened. Certainly from a preterist view, that happened. And not to be anxious what to say before them, because the Holy Spirit's going to be with you at that point. So we start tonight at verse 12. And Dad, if you would read verse 12 and 13.
Now the brother shall betray the brother to death, and the father the son. And children shall rise up against their parents, and shall cause them to be put to death. And you shall be hated of all men for my name's sake, but he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved.
John MacArthur brought out that even with man's improvements in education and science and technology, that man has not advanced morally or spiritually. Man is simply a more comfortable beast. And so man's going to rise up against man, family against family. And we got to keep in mind, too, that what's happening right there. We're going to talk eschatology here, but what's happening in this whole section is that this is Wednesday. I know this is Thursday, this is our meeting time, but this is Wednesday when Jesus is talking, and it's Friday he's going to be murdered. So this is that close. And so the accelerando of the drumbeat is extremely fast right now. John MacArthur also said about 13 that we need to stay faithful in whatever end you may have. Chuck Missler brought out that this Christian life is less likely to be a sprint and more like a marathon, so stay faithful. And the way he put it, he said, if in order to represent Christ, it's very likely that if somebody was outside the door and would have to go outside and be killed, that many of us would just go out and do it. But a marathon is hard. A marathon is hard to run. And so probably a pretty good point. 14 through 18. Doug, would you read that?
But when you see the abomination of desolation standing where he ought not to be, let the reader understand, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let the one who is on the housetop not go down, nor enter his house to take anything out. And let the one who is in the field not turn back to take his cloak. And alas, for women who are pregnant and for those who are nursing infants in those days. Pray that it may not happen in winter.
This event, every one of the commentators seem to focus on the fact that this really is a Jewish thing. It's going to be in Jerusalem. It's going to be in the temple that doesn't exist right now, and it's going to really get things going. So what in the world is an abomination of desolation? According to Mike Winger, it says abomination refers to some sort of idol from the Old Testament, and desolation is an indication that God departs from the temple for spiritual reasons. Well, basically because the idol has gone into what they'll have then as the Holy of Holies. Matthew 24:15 reveals it's an idol, and it causes desolation, which we continue to throw those words around, and it's in the holy place. In Daniel 8:13, there's a conversation among spiritual beings talking about the abomination of desolation. And there's some other scripture in Daniel relating to this, Daniel 9:26-27, also Daniel 11:31. So it's a big event, and everybody's going to know it. So this abomination of desolation was probably not the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. Although, according to Josephus, the commentator from back in that time frame, the Romans made a sacrifice to Caesar at the eastern gate, not in the temple. And so therefore, it doesn't seem to be the abomination of desolation because it wasn't in the temple and they didn't appear to have fled the city. Nobody fled the city. Now, to confuse things, if things aren't confusing enough, around 167 BC, there was an event called the Abomination of Desolation. Antiphus Epiphanes from the first Maccabees 154 stopped the sacrifices. He forbid the feast. He stopped circumcisions. he sacrificed a pig on the bronze altar and changed the name of the temple to the Temple of Zeus. That's a pretty big deal. This started the Maccabean revolt that we've heard about that led to about 100 years of Jewish self-rule. Now, how do we know this was not what Jesus was talking about? Because Jesus was prophesying the event to be in the future. And that event was done in 167 BC. However, this 167 BC event was pretty close. So therefore, it was a already but not yet kind of a thing. It was a model. But according to Paul, it may, there's just things going all over the place here, but according to Paul, it may have been missing one very important element that 2 Thessalonians 2, 1 through 4 talks about. It says, so that he, the one who's doing the abomination, takes his seat in the temple of God, proclaiming himself to be God. And so that was maybe a key factor that he missed. But it talks about, what's that?
I was going to say one of the things that I picked up on through reading the commentary, and that also was the fact that the first temple was built by Solomon, and it was built by the standards that God had pointed out that he wanted the temple to be built.
Mm-hmm.
And when the temple was brought down the first time, Herod rebuilt the temple, and he rebuilt it for himself and actually almost doubled it in size.
Right.
So that's where they were talking partly about the abomination of what they had done to the temple at that point.
So maybe that's another reason, another disqualifier, maybe the 70 AD temple, the temple that was destroyed in 70 AD was not qualified to be the Abomination of Desolation source.
Right.
Maybe. Yeah. All right, 19. So we made it through that. Now, remember that we're going to come back to the Abomination of Desolation for a really good purpose in just a little bit. But we'll talk about the 19 and 20. I'll read it because.
Wait just a minute, Rich.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's something that intrigued me right here. Verse 18. And pray ye that your flight be not in the winter.
Yeah.
And if you think back, winter isn't mentioned very much.
Yeah. Good point.
So it had to be something coming on that was going to be very different.
Very different, very difficult at the very least. Very difficult, yeah. So what do you figure in the winter there'd be less food where they're going? Because they're instructed not to take anything with them.
Well, it's also harder to travel in the wintertime too.
Harder to travel just because of the cold? Not sure. I didn't hear any commentary that, maybe you guys have some good commentary on that. I didn't hear any, or see any good commentary on the winter comment.
I don't have anything.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me read the 19 and 20. For in those days there will be much tribulation, as has not been from the beginning of creation that God created until now, and never will be. And if the Lord had not cut short the days, no human being would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, whom he chose, he shortened the days. All right. The problems, you catch that terminology there? The problems will be so extreme that has not been from the beginning. And there have been some really bad times on this earth recorded. But it'll be worse than that. And you know, you hear people that do studies and look at weather changes or whatever the situation. And Mike Winger brings out, he said, nobody will have to do a weather pattern research to see if something is going on. Yeah, that's not going to be a part of the plan. There's a nuclear bomb or whatever that just went out off my front yard. I'm going to know it. I'm going to know it. There will be no doubt. Skip Heitzig brought out a good point. How, you think of all the bad things that have happened in the world, and you think, well, how can this tribulation be so much worse? Well, it's a confluence of three strains of tribulation. First of all, the direct wrath of God upon the earth. Secondly, the hatred of Satan for God's elect. And third, the epic proportion of man's rebellion. And all those things coming together at once. That's really bad. That's really bad. There's a, I'll leave it in the notes below, in the video when it goes online. John MacArthur had a pretty good synopsis of, and I won't read it because it's a page and a half long, of here's what happens when. And we went through this in Revelation, but we took 3 or 4 months to do it. And a pretty good synopsis of what happens when in all of this turmoil. And I'll share that with you. Now in 21 to 23, this completes a very separated Markan sandwich that started way back in verse 5 and even contained a smaller Markan sandwich in verses 9 and 11. And that is totally geek stuff. I'm not sure if there's any value in it whatsoever. But now that we've recognized Markan sandwiches, we kind of go, wait a minute, I've seen something before. So, whose turn is it? Dad? If you would read 21 through 23.
And then if any man shall say to you, lo, here is Christ, or lo, he is there, believe him not. For false Christ and false prophets shall rise and shall show signs and wonders to seduce, if it were possible, even the elect. But take ye heed, behold, I have foretold you all things.
All right. Remember way back up in verse 5, he said, and Jesus began to say to them, see that no one leads you astray. Many will come in my name saying, I am he, and they will lead many astray. So this completes that Markan sandwich. Why it's said again? Maybe just for emphasis. I'm not sure. Other than, well, it must be important. It's a day and a half, 2 days ahead of him being murdered, so it's important. 24 and 25, Doug.
But in those days, after that tribulation, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light. And the stars will be falling from heaven and the powers in the heavens will be shaken.
All right, we got to ask ourselves. He says, but in those days after that tribulation, all right, what exactly was that tribulation? That was sparked by verse 14, the abomination of desolation. That was the very start of those days. So the tribulation will be so bad that things have never been that bad before, as verse 19 emphasized. Then in 24, it says, now that all that started, then here comes the cosmic signs. So the sun darkened and the moon will not give its light. Big time stuff. Big time stuff. I'll read, go Go ahead.
Total darkness.
Total darkness. Yeah, it doesn't say the sun is totally out, though. It's diminished, evidently, for whatever reason. But what does it say? Let's see here. It will be darkened, and the sun will be darkened. So is darkened, is that like putting sunglasses on, or is that gone? I don't know.
You darken the light, you turn it off, right?
Yeah. Maybe it is totally darkened. And boy,
Let me
can you
see
imagine the turmoil then? Can you imagine the turmoil in total darkness? And stars falling. That's big stuff.
Right.
All right, 26 and 27. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. And then he will send out angels and gather his elect from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of heaven. So, 26, then Jesus returns to judge. That's what he's coming back to do right now. It's interesting. You got to think, well, who are the elect? And who is it here? PL. Who's Paul Labutu there brought up that in all translations, this was interesting. All translations, Jesus says they will see. So look in. They will see, 26, third or fourth word. They will see. It doesn't say you will see, because you, the reader, are the church. But they indicates those saved after the church is gone. And this furthers the point of further points to the premillennial view where Jesus raptures the church, the tribulation starts, then Jesus returns with great power. So the ones being collected then are the elect who are saved in the tribulation. And remember, when we were going through Revelation, we realized that you had Old Testament saints, you had church saints, and you had post tribulation saints, or during tribulation saints, and they all had different roles in heaven at the end times, and it's pretty interesting how that falls out. Is everybody confused enough? We're good. There's some pretty wild stuff here. 28 and 29. Dad, is your turn again? Okay. 28 and 29, Dad.
Okay. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When her branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So ye in like manner, when ye shall see these things come to pass, know that it is nigh, even at the doors.
Okay. So we do recognize that things are happening. And it'll say a little bit later on that it'll happen in quick enough succession that generation that sees it will finish it. Mike Winger brought out some really good points here about what are the signs of the imminent return and what are not the signs of his imminent return. And so we'll talk real quick about there are 8 non-signs of his imminent return that people often use as signs of Jesus' imminent return, but they are not. According to Scripture, what Jesus just told us, these are not signs of his imminent return. People claiming to be Jesus, not a sign. Wars and rumors of wars, not a sign. Sign of pregnancy, sign of proof of life, but not a sign of his imminent return. Earthquakes, not a sign. Famines, not a sign. Matthew adds to this list, if we were to study Matthew, pestilence, not a sign. Delivered to courts, flogged, and stand before governors, not a sign. The gospel proclaimed to all nations, not a sign. Family turning on family, not a sign. But there are two signs of imminent return, and the clock starts ticking. First of all, in verse 14, it says, when you see the abomination of desolation, that's a sign. It's standing where it shouldn't. Second one, cosmic signs. The sun darkened, the moon losing its
will not give its light.
Will not give us light. When those things are seen, it's on for sure. And this is a good time to say this, that it seems obvious from everything that is going to happen that, I mean, when Jesus comes to get the church, it could be at any time. But when Jesus comes to judge, it'll be 1,260 days after the abomination of desolation. That's the one thing you can start a clock on. When the abomination of desolation happens, 1,260 days after that, Jesus will be on the scene, which is 3.5 years. And then he'll judge. The 3.5 years in between that time, from the start of rapture, we don't know if the rapture starts and then the first 3.5 years starts. That's unclear to me, but I think that's correct. Then the Antichrist guy will come on the scene, and he'll be loved and liked by everybody. He'll solve some problems, and it seems likely that he will start the rebuilding of the temple and finish it in that 3.5 years. Allow and encourage the sacrifices to start for the Jewish people within all their rules and regulations, and then decide he wants to be God and try to sit on in the Holy of Holies. And so then it starts. The 1,260 days and bad things happen. But because it's very clear that there has to be a temple if you have an abomination of desolation. There's nothing to set an idol in right now. And so there has to be a temple. But the church doesn't have to be here for that. Clear as mud. Jesus raptures the church first. After that, abomination and desolation will happen at some time. Clock starts, 1,260 days. Then Jesus returns to judge. And I got a lot more stuff on this that I could share, but we won't right now. It's thick. It is thick. So we continue with.
So let me ask you this.
Yep.
Okay, so the first tribulation is going to be the abomination of desolation. And then after those days, that tribulation. Huh?
That will start the bad part of the tribulation. The abomination of desolation will start the bad part of the tribulation.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then after that tribulation, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light and the stars will be falling from heaven. And the powers in heaven will be shaken and they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds. So the only light will be the Son of Man.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right.
The world will be in darkness except for those that see the Son of Light or the Son of Man.
That's the way it appears, doesn't it?
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I had that.
But here's the real comforting part about all that, Doug. We won't be here. As Chuck Missler says, we're going to be watching from the mezzanine.
Right. Well, I remember that from Revelation.
Yeah.
I mean, that was one of the things that I was fascinated with, was the fact that they're talking about all these things that are going to happen, but we'll be standing by watching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's where and he will send out the angels and gather his elect from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of heaven.
So all this is arguable, and boy, there's people on both sides and in the middle and whatnot, but that is the big point to take from it, that we really don't. And every one of the people that I looked at, every one of them are premillennialists, and I didn't do that on purpose. It's just people that I think are right on target that I'm looking at. And a premillennialist is one who believes that we are raptured out before all of this starts. And I used to think that, well, I'm a premillennialist because I'm just a wimp, but I think that Scripture does really point to that situation. I think that we're out of here. So
now, before you go any farther, I'd like to ask a question about verse 25.
Uh-oh. I'm sorry, we won't be able to go back.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And the stars of heaven shall fall, and the powers that are in heaven shall be shaken. Mm-hmm. Now, what constitutes the powers of heaven?
That's a great question. I didn't get any details other than to say that it's a part of the second signs that are imminent, which are cosmic signs. So we got sun, moon, stars falling, and the heavens shaking. What in the world does that mean? How do you shake heavens? I don't know. But we got to remember too that he's describing things that have never been before and will never be again. So it's probably hard to put those into context, I would figure.
Okay.
Yeah. I do not know. All right. 30 through 31. Doug, would you read that, please?
Okay. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away.
So there are three interpretations of this generation. First of all, it can be translated as in a group or ethnic group. So this generation being Jews. Well, they haven't passed away yet, so therefore it's within this generation. That's a possibility. Second option is most scholars think that Jesus was talking about his time. So that's an argument for preterism, because remember, they think that was all accomplished back then. But then there's a third option of this gen, is that they see the abomination of desolation, which Jesus, by self-limitation, did not know when it would be. And it would have been inconsistent for Jesus to say he doesn't know when these things would happen, but then to say when these things would happen. So this generation is likely the generation that exists when they first start to see the abomination of desolation, that Jesus didn't know when it would be exactly at that time. Of course he does now. He's not limited, not self-limited now. So you can figure how long a generation is. It's anywhere between 20 and 38 years, from what people say. Also, when he says, and these are Jesus' words, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. That's a theological bomb right there, because Jesus says that he is God at that point. His word transcends heaven and earth. That's a lot of times you can just read that quickly and not pay much attention because we've heard it so often, but that is a theological bomb. I am God is what he's saying. Let's see. I'll read 32 to 33. Dad, you start to say something? No? Okay. But concerning that day or that hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Be on guard, keep awake, for you do not know when the time will come. So Jesus laid aside many things. This is from Mike Winger. Jesus laid aside many things in order to be with us and be like us. Knowing the day and the time is obviously one of those things. Also consider the value of not knowing. Well, it's a comment for what Dad's going to read. Dad, 34 to 37. Please.
For the Son of Man is as a man taking a far journey, who left his house, gave authority to his servants, and to every man his work, and commanded the porter to watch. Watch ye therefore, for ye know not when the master of the house cometh, at even, or at midnight, or at the cock crowing, or in the morning, lest coming suddenly he find you sleeping. And what I say unto you, I say unto all, watch.
We got to consider the value of not knowing. If Jesus said that in 2023, in June 23rd, blah, 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 this and this is going to happen. Well, you know what? His servants probably wouldn't be that attentive until June 22nd of that year, to be honest. And Jesus knew that. And that's why we don't know, and we've got to stay awake. What does stay awake mean? It means
don't fall asleep spiritually.
Don't spiritually fall asleep. Exactly, Doug. Don't spiritually fall asleep. Don't let it go by. Wrapping this up, this is one thing that has come out very clearly from all of this, because we see people, I can hear sermons in my mind from the past and whatnot, people making predictions and this is gonna happen and look at this and whatever. If we look at this and similar scripture and try to match them to current events and proclaim to the world, oh, this is it, we're out of here, we're making a prediction, either a date or it's going to happen soon or something like that, then you're promoting a losing situation. So if you or we are wrong, we look like zealot idiots. And it's happened hundreds of times before. And our overarching message of the gospel is tainted to the world. And but yet, if we're right, it doesn't matter because we're gone anyway. So let's not look at our situation. And I've done it before. I'm guilty. At our situation and say, oh, we're going to be out of here soon or whatever. Or listen to people who are setting a date. I haven't listened to people that are setting a date. I know better than that. But if we look at the situation around it, we just got to recognize it as for what Jesus said it was. They're just birth pangs. And birth pangs have lasted since creation. So they're just signs of life. And yeah, things will probably get worse and continue to get worse, but they're just signs. Before they get too bad, I think that we'll be out of here. So hang in there is kind of the storyline here. Hang in there.